Man, oh man, has this one been a long time coming. But before we really tear into this, I just want to make something clear. I'm not going to play the safe way. This will not be about Transformers. There will be no raping childhood here, no racist robots, none of that. I will not have the video devolve into either this,
he stinks and I don't like him,
or heaven forbid this,
your mother sucks fucking big fucking elephant dicks. You got that?
and I will not refer to Michael Bay fans like this.
Never seen so many backwards ass country fucks in my life.
You see, unlike 99.9% of Michael Bay rants on the internet, I want to really address what is wrong with the man. I don't want another copy and paste rant. Because ironically, like the Boers, people spent so long harping on one thing that they failed to see what is genuinely wrong here. And so, in this case, I'm going to bring up two examples I think best show my issues with Mr. Bay. The Rock and Pearl Harbor, one of which I've already reviewed in the past. Because I feel these two illustrate what is fundamentally wrong with Michael Bay's approach to filmmaking, and for me there are several issues. Let's start off with probably one of the major ones, and that is the quality of the story and the tone. Michael Bay seems to have this thing where he cannot make up his mind. He and the writers that he works with cannot make up their minds what kind of film they want and what tone it should be. In pretty much every Bay movie, it jumps around a lot. There's no real sense of what did you want to make? What at the end of this were you looking to accomplish? In The Rock, there is a constant jumping of tone. 1 minute it's meant to be super serious and dark with all the stuff about the soldiers being screwed over by the government. And then the next minute we have cheesy one-liners courtesy of Connery and Cage and over-the-top action. For me, if there's any movie that really illustrates what's wrong, it's Con Air. For me, Con Air shows everything that The Rock just doesn't do well. Con Air, from beginning to end, is tonally consistent. It's a very silly film, but that's the point of it. At no point does the movie try to be serious or pretend to be something more than it is. It's a dumb popcorn action movie, and that's the way it stays. The Rock feels the need to put in some sort of commentary on the military, and all I could think was, why? Do you really want me to take this seriously when you have such a ridiculous premise at the center of this, that there's this all-powerful chemical weapon that this bunch of soldiers have? And not to mention it's not helped by the fact that a lot of the dialogue is just so cheesy and silly, and it runs through the book of action movie cliches, you know. Connery and Cage pretty much do everything that you expect the old guy, young guy team in action films to do, and it's not very amusing, it's not very interesting, and it's just not well done. I mean, Connery and Cage, you know, being them, they try, but really, what can you do? And of course, at the end of The Rock, there's that whole, hey, we found this microfilm that has all these secrets, and I'm like, what? What is the point? I mean, what tone were you going for, Michael? Did you want me to care about all the military stuff, or were you just looking for an excuse to give your movie a bit more meat than it would otherwise have had? I'm sorry, you know, I'm all for a summer movie trying to talk about deeper issues, but this was handled really poorly, and the soldier stuff just feels shoehorned in an excuse to give some sympathy for the villain, who, by the way, is just cartoonish, and that cartoonishness goes back to actually the opening scene of the movie, which, to be fair to Michael, it's directed very well. The lighting, the rain, the use of music, it's all very well done. And of course the shots are nice and tight. There's, you know, you definitely get the feeling that there's something tragic going on. And of course Ed Harris is standing in front of the grave of his wife. You know, it's rain, you know, there's flowers in his hand. It's a beautiful little scene. That's ruined when he opens his mouth and says, "I miss you." Michael, did you not think we are capable as an audience of putting images together and figuring out, he's standing in front of a gravestone, he's got flowers in his hand, he's looking sad, maybe the person in that grave is someone close to him, and he misses her. But no, you had to spell it out for us. Why? It didn't add anything, it didn't tell us anything about his character that we couldn't guess from the visuals. That opening was perfectly fine. There was no reason to throw in a bit of dialogue in there. And of course Pearl Harbor, dear God. It's like the love story is so unbelievably shoehorned, and all of the political stuff, all the stuff that actually matters, when discussing Pearl Harbor, the backstabbing, the political intrigue, the divisions and backstage and backdoor business that was going on between Japan and America at that time, takes a backseat in what is effectively their own movie. That would be like making a movie about the Holocaust and then focusing in on a young German couple who are living in a villa in some Austrian mountain. What's the point of calling your movie Pearl Harbor and then have actual Pearl Harbor be something so minor and really unimportant? I mean, you could take that movie and set it anywhere. There's no reason for it to be in Pearl Harbor. You could set it in any major war disaster. It'd be the same movie. There's nothing about it that makes me think this absolutely had to be Pearl Harbor. And to further push my story quality point, it's just so wooden. It's just so flat. I mean, Affleck, Beckinsale, and whoever the other guy was, they're good actors, but they just can't do anything with the material. It's just stale. It's really contrived. And when Affleck's character comes back in around the halfway point, which, again, this is a movie meant to be about Pearl Harbor, but actual Pearl Harbor doesn't happen until like the last 40 minutes of the movie. It just feels really contrived, and you have to wonder, why did you bother bringing him back? This was at least getting somewhat interesting, and then you had to have it be the whole, oh no, we gotta have the love triangle come back again, because, it was so interesting and engaging the first time round. And that bleeds into, my second point about Bay movies. They're all based on a gimmick. Look at Bay's entire catalogue of movies. What do they all have in common? They all have a gimmick that helps them sell to the mass audience. With the Bad Boys movies, what was it? Will Smith and Martin Lawrence in an action movie exchanging one-liners and all that stuff. The Rock, seeing Sean Connery in a major action movie after all that time, and of course being with Nick Cage. Transformers, I think, speaks for itself. And that's probably one of the few times in this video I'm going to bring up Transformers because, it's pertinent to this point. And even his most recent film, the upcoming Pain and Gain, what is it? What if bodybuilders were in an action movie, like proper bodybuilders? Not, Schwarzenegger being, his cheesy self. All films have premises that engage the audience, but this is just silly. A movie shouldn't have to sell itself just because of that one aspect. There should be more going on. I mean, let's use an example. Watchmen, for example. If we forget for a moment, just completely forget that was based on a major graphic novel that is probably one of the best pieces of literature of the last century. What did that movie have going for it? If we take that away from it, what did it have going? It was a comic book movie that was a lot darker than most of them, promised a deeper story, more characters, doing a real ensemble film before Avengers, of course, and talking about deeper themes and issues of what is good and what is bad, what price should we pay to do something, who is the hero. There's a lot of stuff in there that even if you didn't know it was based on a novel would still attract you. What does the Michael Bay movie have? Just the one gimmick, and oh yeah, it has some pretty effects. Whoop. And that bleeds into the next point, which is the argument that Michael Bay fans love to pull out, and people who defend his movies. And by the way, I'm not going to get all elitist here, because I hate elitists. They just, they really wreck the movie-going experience, and they overthink things. But, it's always this one card, this one thing that I just find a really bad and boring excuse for Michael Bay's lack of attention to story and character. And it's just an action movie. Just enjoy it for the action. And literally, tell me there isn't a Michael Bay fan who doesn't pull that card out. Now, I could easily pull up a whole list of movies that have special effects and good, or at the very least decent stories with actual characters. And not to mention, why sacrifice story and character just for more visual flair? Why not have actual investment in the material? Why not have your audiences get inside the characters' heads? Look at what all the really great action movies have in common. they let us get into the characters' heads. Even if they're not super developed, we at least see where they're coming from, what they're about, what makes them tick, and we get to know them in some regard. In a Michael Bay film, you'll be hard-pressed if you know really anything about these characters outside of the obvious. I mean, let's use another example, Predator. You know, yes, you have Arnold being himself, but you know what? These characters, though they're not super developed, have likable qualities to them, and we get to see what makes them tick, and we get little hints here and there into their backstories. In The Rock, on the other hand, most of the people in that movie are either people who I don't know anything about, or if they're major players, I barely get inside their heads, and I don't know what makes them tick, and thus when they get shot up by the bad guys, why should I care? And furthermore, that plays into the whole, you know, what's the point of the whole military subtext, because towards the end of the film, and I doubt this is a spoiler because, you know, it's action movie 101, but when some of Ed Harris's men turn on him, they suddenly become cartoon characters, and it's like, wait, weren't these guys fighting for, like, this whole thing of soldiers getting screwed over by the government and not getting their pay? Why are they suddenly cartoon supervillains? Why are they suddenly, you know, effectively twirling their mustaches and just, you know, wanting to blow up San Francisco? I mean, doesn't that defeat the whole point of why they're there in the first place? And now that we've covered some of the issues within his movies, let's actually address the man himself. What could I possibly have wrong with Michael himself? It'd be very tempting for me to say he's a dumbass and a retard, but again, we're not going to go down the route of every other Michael Bay video. The man can't take criticism, and I'm not saying that just to hate on him. If you go to the IMDb page or any sort of site that has a lot of information on Michael, he has been quoted as saying that if people don't like my movies, I just do what Jerry Bruckheimer told me to. I ignore him. Now, what does that say about, man? You're a film director directing these major projects, and you're basically saying to your critics, I don't care what you think. I don't care if you think my movies are bad. So what? I'll just keep making them. Let me point out something here. After Spielberg had the hiccup with 1941, critics slammed it, and what happened then? He made Raiders of the Lost Ark. When critics slammed Scorsese's New York, New York, he made Raging Bull. Francis Ford Coppola went from Jack to The Rainmaker. When some people had issues with Batman Begins, Nolan fixed them in Dark Knight. Do you see what I'm getting at here? All good filmmakers, or at least decent ones, have that in common. They are able to deal with criticism and take it on board and improve it for the next time round. But what Michael is saying here is, hey, I don't care if you criticize my movies legitimately, I don't care. I'm going to still make money and I could not care less what you think. Why? You're being paid all this money by the studios to bring about these projects that you've openly admitted in the past you don't personally care for. Again, check your various sites out there if you don't believe me. How did a guy like this get to work with some of the best talent in the field? And I'm not going to attack the people who worked with him, you know, the crews on the various movies, because, you know what, they're just guys in the industry. They're there to make their money and feed their families, okay? They're just doing their job. Michael Bay is in a position where a lot of young filmmakers, and a lot of young filmmakers far more talented than himself would love to be, and he's doing all this stuff and basically saying, I don't care what you think. Think about that. Is that the kind of guy you want to spend your hard-earned money on when you go to a cinema, slap down the $7.50 for a ticket and another $7.50 for the popcorn and candy? Is that what you want? Because again, look at the examples I brought up. These people were criticized by critics and audiences, and they were able to fix up what was wrong. Has Michael Bay done any of that? Nope. And don't say to me, Dark of the Moon. Again, really reluctant to try and to have to bring up Transformers here. Because, let's be honest here, he knew what he was doing when he was making Revenge of the Fallen. He knew that script was unfinished. He knew things were not ready to go. He knew that aspects of it were undercooked. But he still went ahead with it. He didn't care. He was getting a solid paycheck. He didn't care about the people who were watching that movie. He said, hey, I'm going to rush this out and make a lot of money. And the same thing applies to his Platinum Dunes company, which, by the way, is the company that's been the most associated with remakes this past decade. They're the ones behind the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, Hitcher, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Amityville Horror. And this really gets on my nerves, not because they're remaking old movies, because, I've already talked in the past about that whole thing, but because of the people he hires. He hires people who have no background in horror, or have a very limited experience. You know why Samuel Bayer got to direct Nightmare on Elm Street the remake? Not because he had experience with horror, not because he loved the previous movies, but because he was Michael Bay's buddy. No, I'm not making that up, people. Look it up. He only got that job just because he was friends with Michael Bay. Seriously, you're hiring a guy just because he's your friend, not because he's right for the material, not because he has a background in it. I mean, my God, I'd sooner give the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street to Rob Zombie, because at least he's worked in horror before. Not the greatest, but at least he's done something in that field. And really, I'm trying really hard not to sound like a film snob, because I like big dumb action movies as much as the next guy. I just brought up Con Air, and there are a whole bunch of other movies that I like that are pretty silly and stupid. I've even reviewed some of them. So I'm not some pompous film snob who believes every movie should be art. I say, hey, as long as it entertains me, I'm fine with that, okay? Don't care, how stupid or silly it is, I'll go with that. But there's a line between stupid that's done with a sense of taste, with a sense of, hey, I'm not to be taken seriously, and there's a line where you're just like, you're trying really hard to insult me, aren't you? I'm not going to make vapid, empty claims about anyone. That's not my style. I'm not going to say things like Michael Bay is the devil because I don't know him personally. I can only say what I know from what I've read and looked up on the man. I'm not going to make hollow judgments without any sort of backing. But I have to be blunt about something. He bothers me for the same reason that Seltzerberg bothered me. And I know that's another cheap punching bag, but really, the two bother me for the same reason, or three, since Seltzerberg is a duo. What example are they saying to the next generation of filmmakers, the young kids and the audiences who see these movies, and of course, teenagers and young adults who might want to get into filmmaking? What example are they setting? That you don't need story or characters or something fundamentally deeper in your movie to get your audience hooked. Just throw whatever crap you can on the screen, make it all bright and pretty, and there you go. The people will eat it up. When a lot of young, good directors are out there, and of course there are obvious names, Peter Jackson, Christopher Nolan, Paul Thomas Anderson, the one who made There Will Be Blood and The Master, not the guy behind the Resident Evil movies, Wes Anderson, Darren Aronofsky, James Mangold. I mean, there's a whole bunch of names I could list who make not just better movies than Bay, but also have more respect for the audience and understand that, hey, I don't need to spell things out for you. I can let you guys do the work as well, and I can let you enjoy my movies without beating you over the head. Or in Seltzerberg's case, just saying, hey, it's that guy from that movie. Ain't that funny? Ha ha ha. What's that going to say to them? What kind of example does that set? And where does that leave quality? And I know I'm going deeper than some people think I should, but I really just want to voice this all out there because I don't want to have to address this topic again. At what point do we say to ourselves, you know what, it's all good having fun and games, but we need to start really worrying about the quality and saying to ourselves, no, you can do better than this. And well, that's pretty much all I have to say. So I hope that this is the only time I will ever have to talk about Bay, because I really want to devote this series to a diverse amount of subjects. And well, you guys, as always, are free to comment below and say your thoughts. So, thanks.